Hello, Oracles. Oracle Tim here from Oracle Investments. Earlier this week, we posed a question, and it was about EVs, who is the leader, who is going to be the leader, and asking a whole bunch of questions as to, all right, what's the reality behind everything to find out truly who is the leader in EVs right now. You know, we looked into important questions like, what are sales? What's production? What are your margins like? What does your future hold? What are your goals for the future? And what other revenue streams do you have coming in or planned for the future? Well, I did a lot of digging and went through some of the top EV manufacturers right now. And I put them all in order, and the order is based upon how many vehicles they have sold this year, year to date through Q3. So I put them all in that order, and I'll go through them one by one. If you want all the full numbers, in the description down below, I did put all of the numbers that I got from down there. A lot of the numbers were hard to come by, especially for the Chinese manufacturers. For the most part, I got everything from the own manufacturers' reports because I wanted to get the most true and accurate numbers I could possibly get for you guys. So I got most of them from the reports. Some of the things I had to kind of round a little bit. There was questionable information on some of the Chinese stocks, but so I will get to all these manufacturers right now in order of how they are doing based on 2021 through Q3. First up, we have Ford. Ford is the last one to get on the bandwagon for this. Ford had no EVs produced in 2019 or 2020, and through 2021 Q3, they have 22,000 vehicles sold, and I don't know what they're projected for the end of the year because they started late in the year, so they may hit like 50,000 by the end of this year. Their projections for 2025 are about 500,000 vehicles sold for the year. So obviously Ford is not looking to be a leader of any sort. They're just looking to transition into this. And their margins are 5.5%. So it's kind of on the low side. And, you know, obviously when you're transitioning from ICE to EVs, you know, a lot of these legacy automotive makers don't have a lot of margin in their EVs if they have any at all. So they realistically have to get rid of their margin vehicles in order to produce the EVs and get to where they want to be. So I'm really curious over the next year or so to see how their margins change as they're transitioning. Next is Li Auto. Li Auto is one of the upstarts over in China. They got started a few years ago. They sold 1,000 vehicles in 2019 as they got started late in that year as well. They've got 33,000 vehicles that they sold in 2020. And so far through 2021 through Q3, they've got 54,500 vehicles sold. And they seem to have been doing a great job ramping themselves up as a new vehicle manufacturer over there. Their projections for 2025 is based on Beijing wanting to have 20% of their vehicles be EVs, and Li Auto wants to have 20% of that 20%. So that would be about 1.6 million vehicles sold in 2025. I mean, they've been ramping quite well. Whether they're going to get to that point or not is to be seen. But they do have margins of about 23% on their vehicles, which is pretty significant. So we'll see if that can hold, and you know, if they can continue that, become profitable, and get themselves a lot of this invested back into their business, they could potentially get there. Xpeng, another startup that came to fruition a few years back. 2019, they sold 13,000 vehicles. In 2020, they sold 35,000, and through Q3 of 2021, they have sold 56,000. So they're pretty close to Li Auto in terms of growth. The projections I have seen for Xpeng were about 650,000 vehicles sold in 2025, and their margins are a little bit lower than Li Auto's at about 19.5%. Next on the list is NIO. I actually own stock in NIO. It is the only Chinese automaker, actually the only Chinese stock at all that I own stock in. And so in 2019, they sold 20,000 vehicles. In 2020, they sold 44,000 vehicles. And through Q3 of 2021, they have sold 65,000 vehicles. So a lot of these Chinese automotive makers are kind of on the same pace with each other. They're all growing at about the same rate, which is nice to see because that is how China is trying to grow the EV industry over there. Now, NIO's projections for 2025 were harder to come by. So based off of just rough numbers, they're looking at about 350,000 vehicles sold What their actual goals are, I do not know, but their margins are at about 20% as well, so they seem to be primed pretty well for growth. Next on our list is VW, and in 2019, VW sold 82,000 vehicles, EVs. In 2020, they sold 212,000, so that was some nice growth. And then through Q3 of 2023, they have sold 293,000 EVs. And now we know that there's some turmoil going on in VW right now between Herbert Diess, who really wants to acknowledge that Tesla's got this lead and they want to chase them, whereas the rest of VW is like, yeah, we'll be fine, we'll get there. But their goal is to, beat Tesla, and Tesla's goal is over 6 million vehicles by 2025. So if that's the goal, then VW is going to have to hit over 6 million vehicles sold for EVs in 2025. And they have to do so with margins that are kind of shabby, right around 7%. And now onto the self-proclaimed leader, GM. They sold 20,000 vehicles in 2019, and they had 200,000 sold. This is including their joint ventures with China and everything else. So they had 2,000 EVs sold in 2020. And through Q3 of 2021, they have 300,000 sold. But keep in mind that their Chevy Bolt is going to be out of production for quite a while. They're not even looking until 2023 to have them back on the roads again and sold. And GM, who says that they are currently the leader, but also say that they want to take over the lead in 2025, doesn't make sense that you... Anyway. So their goal is to obviously be the leader in 2025, so they also would be on pace and needing to get to 6 million vehicles sold in 2025. And they've got to do so with margins right around 8.5%. And I did put Toyota on the list just because Toyota is the leading manufacturer of vehicles in the world. And so I wanted to get Toyota on here. So most of their vehicles, and the numbers I used, are for hybrids or APV, alternative power vehicles. And I won't get into that now, but it's all different types of power and things, hybrids, fuel cell, things like that. So in 2020, they sold 2 million hybrids. In 2021 through Q3, they have sold 407,000 APV vehicles. Their goal for 2025 is to have 5.5 million hybrid or APVs on the road sold. So that would be 4.5 million in hybrids and 1 million in pure EVs. Toyota's margins are higher on the higher ends. They're at 10%, but Toyota has also acknowledged the fact that they don't really care about all of this. They're going to keep on doing their plan as they see it, and they see that their way is the future and don't really feel like changing. We'll see how that plays out for them, but that is their strategy, which is why trying to determine pure EVs for them is difficult, because they really don't acknowledge that at all. And now coming in second place is BYD out of China. And in 2019, they sold 225,000 EVs. And for BYD, I used both hybrids and pure EVs because they usually combine them. It was hard to get separate numbers consistently. So they combined them, so I said, that's fine, I'll combine them similar to what I did with Toyota. And now in 2020, they were victim to the sales declines, so they only sold 189,000 EVs in 2020, but through Q3 of 2021, they are currently at 410,000 vehicles sold. So, if there is any real competition out there for Tesla, it would be BYD. Problem with BYD is they're only in China and just now starting to branch out into other countries. Now, getting projections for goals for BYD for 2025 was also difficult. So I just kind of had to do some rough math and projections based upon their growth and if they did a 50% growth similar to Tesla. So that would put BYD somewhere around the 4 million EVs sold in 2025. And their margins are around 11%. So they're, because they're transitioning also from ICE vehicles over to EVs, they're going to have that margin hit. And now on to the true leader of EVs in the world. And so we've got Tesla. And in 2019, they sold 368,000 vehicles. In 2020, they sold 500,000 vehicles. And so far through 2021, they've sold 627,000 through Q3. And projected they're going to most likely be over 900,000 vehicles sold. So, so far ahead of everyone else, it's not even close. And literally most manufacturers have stated that Tesla is who they're trying to catch. And based on Elon's goals of 50% growth every year, Tesla's looking at between 5 million and 6 million vehicles sold in 2025. And Tesla is doing so at margins at around 14.5% for operating margins, and their vehicle margins are about 30%. That's what they hit this past quarter. And so when you look at it, their Model Y is right around there. So if they're looking at having their best-selling vehicle and what is going to potentially be the best-selling vehicle in the world at about a 30% margin, or at least the ones coming out of China, then you're looking at really solid margins going forward as well. And looking at all of these other manufacturers, when you're looking at other revenue streams that they could have coming in to bring up their margins, most of the legacy automotive makers, their other sources of income are service. And as these companies are moving away from their ICE vehicles that require service, they're losing that stream of income. And looking at legacy automotive makers and just EVs in general, why are you going to go to a company and a maker that is creating a vehicle that requires maintenance versus going to someone like a Tesla where their vehicle requires very little maintenance? It's like, here, I've sold you this thing, it's gonna have problems. I made it purposely so that it has problems, but don't worry, we'll also sell you the solution. Like, do you trust that? And and Tesla also has their energy. They've got insurance, they've got FSD, and while other automotive makers are coming up with FSD, none of them have yet to prove themselves of any real sort on a scaling type manner, or anything that's even close to the quality of the FSD that Tesla has. So just based off of pure numbers, going by what I have seen, what these manufacturers have produced, what their goals are, what they can actually do and scale with, Tesla clearly has the lead, and they have the tools that they need to maintain that lead. Like, nobody else even has anything close to saying, hey, we can catch up. BYD is the only one of any sort that is close to that. Everybody else has to spend energy in breaking down other parts of their business just to be able to produce, to get close to what Tesla is doing. So realistically, there is, in my opinion, no question who the leader in EVs is. If you are looking for a stock to purchase for EVs, clearly Tesla is the way to go. They still have a ton of growth ahead of them. The EV market in the world is still very minuscule and a small piece of what the entire global automotive industry is. And depending on whatever your thoughts are and how you think that the EV industry is going to grow over the next 10 years will determine how much of an investment you think you would want to put into something like a Tesla or any other one of these automotive makers, because that's going to determine what kind of growth they're all going to have based upon how EVs take over the market. Let me know in the comments below if you think anyone else on this list has an absolute chance to catch Tesla anytime over the next 10 years. And let me know in the comments also if I missed an automotive maker that you would like to see on the list that I may have missed. Thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate all of your support and feedback. If you have not subscribed, please do so down below. Like this video, sign yourself up for notifications, and we will see you guys all later. Thank you so much. Have a great one.